The news finally broke today, well, officially at least, that Miguel Angel Lopez will be leaving Team Movistar as soon as the 1st of October in a couple of weeks. This marks the end of the fallout between Lopez and Movistar after he abandoned the Vuelta during stage 20 at the start of this month. In this video, which you will like down below, we're going to look at who is to blame for the relationship ending between Lopez and Movistar, and we're really going to take a look at that stage 20 in detail to see if it's true, the rumors that Unzue or Movistar told Lopez to wait, or why Lopez might have abandoned. But first of all, I just want to talk about whether Lopez has been a good teammate this year, and I think he has been. He's been pretty selfless when asked to work for other riders at Movistar. This is the Criterium de Dauphiné stage 6. This finish suited Valverde perfectly. It was quite a large group, and there was no one else. Well, Mas obviously never paces, but Lopez took it upon himself to pace for Alejandro Valverde, kept it all together as long as possible, did a really, really long pull. Apparently, he even told Valverde, this is the stage you should go for, I'll lead you out. And Bala did his thing on the punchy finish, coming around Gegenhardt, winning their stage and their biggest win of the year. To that point, they'd only won a stage at Romandy, I think, with Marc Soler, their only other World Tour win before then. Then the Tour de France, he obviously didn't perform for his own ambitions, but stage 17, when Mas got dropped with like 11 Ks to go on Portet, I think, he pulled for Enric Mas, limiting his losses on the general classification. Then it was time for La Vuelta, perhaps Movistar's most important race of the year. They had 2.5 leaders. Well, they had Enric Mas and Lopez as co-leaders, but Mas was always going to be the leader ahead of Lopez, or slightly ahead of him in the pecking order, and then Valverde, a bit of a shadow leader. The first mountain stage, stage 3, we saw the role and the importance of Valverde for having both Mas and Lopez ahead on GC. He was the rider they used to pull on Picon Blanco, probably when he was strong enough to attack, to really reduce that group. And then even Enric Mas attacked at the end of this stage, and Lopez kind of chased him down, which was a bit weird, to be fair. But the reason I really wanted to show this stage is because Valverde was going to be incredibly important for those two in the medium mountain stages later in the Vuelta, in some of the mountain stages when one of them felt good, or closing gaps, because both of them, if you take out Lilian Colmejean, were up there in second and third on virtual general classification behind Primoz Roglic. And we saw that role for Valverde again in stage 7, the Balcon de Alicante stage, where he's always going to be either the first attacker, or when it comes down to it, when a gap needs to be closed, it was going to be Valverde closing it first for Mas and Miguel Angel Lopez. This stage was a good medium mountain opportunity for Movistar to mount an attack with their strong team. Rojas created separation for Valverde. They were joined by Carapaz. Then Jumbo-Visma had to chase for Primoz Roglic. You're doing a good job bringing it back, but then when Carapaz went through this corner ahead of Valverde, Valverde hit that divot in the road and crashed out. And this changed the Vuelta significantly for Movistar, and particularly for their prospects of keeping two riders up there in the general classification, especially when I think Oliveira crashed as well. He didn't abandon. Jacobs crashed out of the Vuelta. They really had Verona as their only guy good in medium mountains and early or low grade in high mountains. But otherwise, those two, Lopez and Mas, would pretty much be on their own. And an example of that was on stage 9, 2 days after Valverde abandoned. Yates attacked. Ineos here kind of went for the jugular, attacking Roglic really early, and it might have cost them a podium place later, but they were going for the win, so you can't really begrudge them that, perhaps a little bit early from Adam Yates. But it was Miguel Angel Lopez marking Adam Yates there. Enric Mas sitting in the group with Bernal and Primoz Roglic. Yates attacked again 3Ks later. I'm just highlighting it was always Miguel Angel Lopez closing gaps. If there was a gap that needed to be closed, once Valverde had crashed out, it was Miguel Angel Lopez doing that for Enric Mas, and Enric Mas was rarely doing that. And then once Lopez brought back Yates, Enric Mas countered, and Lopez then, for tactical reasons, and probably he would have let the wheel go of Mas, one would think, he had to sit behind in the group of Yates, Hagen, Bernal. So even if Lopez felt good at this moment, he's sitting on, drinking a bottle of water, and this is where Mas gets a lot of his lead actually on Miguel Angel Lopez on that stage 9. Another example of this, stage 10, Rincon de la Victoria finish. This was the stage when Roglic attacked for pretty much no reason. And again, we see, and I'm not criticizing it, I think someone has to close the gap eventually. And Mas is the guy who's second on GC. Mas is the guy that Movistar probably prefer to be out of the two of them finishing on the podium. And I'd say also Mas has an underrated, consistent TT. Miguel Angel Lopez is closing that gap to Primoz Roglic, with Enric Mas sitting in and Jack Haig there as well. And eventually Roglic obviously crashes. They catch back up, and it's Lopez pacing on the descent. So the reason I'm showing all this is I'm building up perhaps what's in Miguel Angel Lopez's mind, which is, I've done a lot of work for the team at this Vuelta. I'm also sitting third on GC. And yes, he was able to attack and had the freedom to do so in a couple of stages in the second week, but no one set up these moves. Mas didn't pace, nor should he really. But without Valverde, Lopez was pretty much having to do it himself. And even on stage 17, Covadonga stage, when Bernal and Roglic went up the road, neither of Lopez or Mas pulled. They're both going for the podium, and they literally had no domestiques to pull in the group. It was all on Bahrain victorious. But with that all being said about Lopez, he's had to pull a lot for Enric Mas a few times in pivotal situations. Yeah, that's true, but I would say he got a fair amount of freedom to attack himself. Like, say on that stage 9 to Verifique, if Yates went up the road and he stayed there, maybe he would have gained time, but he didn't. And on Gamonitero, the Queen stage, and Lopez, this is why he is such a good rider on his day. He's a Queen stage killer. Col de la Loze last year, and this year on Gamonitero, I think probably the hardest mountaintop finish in the Grand Tour this year. He countered after Bernal and Timarche pulled, and no one could go with him. And he won the Queen stage of the Vuelta, the biggest stage win, the only Grand Tour stage win for Movistar this year. Won the stage in pretty convincing fashion in roads that almost looked like Col de la Loze last year. And he gained more time on Jack Haig as well. Importantly, he gained another 35 seconds. But that's what I'm saying. He got freedom to attack. So I don't think he was imprisoned too much to his own detriment. It was just more they didn't have Movistar with only 5 guys left in the team at this point, the riders, to set up moves for him in the second week or on the Covadonga stage, for example. But here you can see the GC rankings going into the pivotal stage 20, which was a medium mountain stage, perfect for a long distance raid. Ineos and Bahrain were both trying to do exactly the same thing, to get it on the podium, to put Mas and Lopez under pressure. And it started with like 90 kilometers plus, with Ineos pacing with Puccio, eating into the breakaway. Then they paced with Pidcock, who ate another 2.5, 3 minutes into the breakaway. Then Sivakov. And now we're going to slow it down a little bit to really look at what happened when the split occurred, this famous split, which Lopez got caught on the wrong side of. Sivakov was pacing 60.6 k's to go, 4.6 k's left on a long, steady gradient climb before Adam Yates attacks with 60 k's to go. And he attacks hard and long. That's Lopez closing the gap with, I think, while Pole's on his wheel. Egan Bernal actually gets put on a bit of a gap and is struggling, and it's Gino Maida closing it for Bernal. Both Lopez and Mas are in this group with Adam Yates, as well as Stefan Kruijswijk. Bernal gets back to them, back to the back wheel of Jack Haig, promptly gets on the radio and says, Adam, stop, I'm in a bit of trouble. And Yates immediately pulls off and stops his action. Maida, Poles, the rest of the group come back. Kruijswijk tries to get on the front to steady the ship for Primoz Roglic before Bernal attacks through the middle, marked by Haig. Obviously, Haig trying to protect his 4th on GC. Lopez, with 2 guys on 4th and I think 5th on GC going ahead of him, has to mark that move himself. So he just had to mark this move. There's no domestic, no Valverde to do this for Lopez. And you see the benefit of teammates behind for Primoz Roglic. Stefan Kruijswijk did a very important job at this point for Roglic, closing this gap for him. Mas is riding on Kruijswijk's wheel, and they all get back to the group. Bernal stops his action before Yates counters again. And this is the pivotal attack and split. Mas had moved up ahead of Miguel Angel Lopez in this group, and Haig is to the left of Miguel Angel Lopez. So Haig, who's the last man to get across from this group on Mas' wheel, is right there with Lopez. The camera changes angle and we see that Mas has sprinted out of that group. That's him with Jack Haig on his wheel. So the question is, why is Lopez caught behind? You see him now coming around. This is actually a fairly decent 4 to 5 second gap. So the question is, was Lopez cooked, or did he tactically make a mistake leading on Bernal? I think it's a combination of both. He probably was like, if I can't keep closing all these attacks myself, I'll lean on Bernal to close this, but Bernal didn't. Bernal let the wheel go, the gap grew, and you see the overhead shot. It's actually a fairly sizable gap. And Lopez was pacing really hard. It's not like he gave up straight away. He had this group he was in strung out, but he was competing against Maida and Haig just as it had flattened out, and those two were pulling very, very strong. The gap was out to 25 seconds with 55 Ks to go, and 2.5 Ks later, it was still only at about 35 seconds. So the gap was going out gradually, even though they'd been on the flat. They got on the descent. It's only 37 seconds. Lopez is holding it he's bleeding time, but not buckets of time, and he should be losing time to the bigger duo ahead of him pacing in concert. So he's doing a pretty good job up to this point. Bahrain have got Marc Padun up the road, who gets called back, and now with 47.5 Ks to go, the gap is stable over 30 seconds. You see Roglic on the radio, the Jumbo, Visma, Ineos, and Movistar and Bahrain cars are going to get called forward. We don't see the Lopez group for a couple of minutes. The gap is only 48 seconds. The camera cuts back. and no one's pacing on the front of this group with 46.3Ks to go. We see the Ineos team car, I believe, has just passed this group, and Movistar with Lopez and Mas ahead of Ineos in the general classification would have been ahead of the Ineos team car in the convoy, so they've already passed, and Lopez has suddenly stopped pacing. So his father-in-law said that Lopez was told to stop pacing by Nzue out of the car. I listened to an interview of Nzue in Spanish on the cycling podcast, and they said as well that Nzue almost confirmed he told Lopez to wait up for Rojas. And it's at this moment, I think at least, that he was told to wait for Rojas. The problem is, Rojas is in another suburb of Spain, and the gap was only about 50 seconds before Lopez stopped pacing. And with Bernal not taking it up behind, Mader and Haig keep pacing in the front group. They eventually catch up with their choo-choo train up to Marc Perdun. The gap's already out to 3.5 minutes when they catch Perdun. So by the time Rojas even got back to pace for Miguel Angel Lopez, his position in the top 5 on GC was already pretty much done. And all we then saw of him was with 30Ks to go, Rojas pacing him the gap at like 4.5 minutes. And then nothing more until we heard rumors on race radio that Lopez had stopped. He was on the side of the road. He'd abandoned the race. We then saw these screenshots on Twitter of Miguel Angel Lopez on the phone getting into the Movistar team car. He'd abandoned the race. But then what happened after Lopez abandoned, which, look, it's not a good look. He acknowledged that evening, I shouldn't have abandoned, I should have continued the race. He didn't really cost his teammates anything in future stages because it was just a TT the next day. He did cost himself and Movistar a top 10 in the general classification, but he shouldn't have abandoned. But is it the end of the world that he DNF'd? He had a bad moment on the road. He just lost it. I don't think it's the end of the world. It's not a great look. I saw worse things the day before from Mikel Landa on Covadonga, where he had good legs. He impressively bridged across to the breakaway and then didn't stay. The brake didn't stick, and then he just DNF'd that stage. Like, he was able to obviously finish the stage, one would think. And then you have Bahrain needing all the teammates they can get for the next few stages, helping Jack Hay get onto the podium, which he did afterwards. But I've not heard much furor about Landa, who also, I would say, straight up quit on his teammates as well. But the reason this was always going to turn sour, and you could see maybe it's Lopez that didn't want to continue at Movistar, is his entourage was to giving interviews straight afterwards for the days afterwards. His wife was on Instagram. When he put out the statement that evening, which is all, calming everything, I'm sorry for doing that, for quitting my teammates, sorry to the sponsors and the fans, etc. But then his wife on Instagram was posting stories saying, We've been silenced. Wait until you can hear the real story someday. So I don't think this is just Movistar terminating Lopez's contract. I think he probably doesn't want to stay at Movistar anyway, which is weird because he just signed a 2-year extension at Movistar before the Vuelta. Everything seems to be going well. But what's been most interesting to me has been to see the public reaction to this and compare it. We just had a case study, Simone Biles, at the Olympics. The reaction's been very, very different, and they're quite similar scenarios. I think Lopez has been almost universally panned by the press, particularly on social media, etc. And then Movistar and he have cut ties. I think the reaction is more similar to what happened to Vontae Davis when he retired literally during an NFL match back in 2018 and was pretty widely criticized. But let me know what you think down below. If you were Movistar, would you have terminated Miguel Angel Lopez's contract over this? Do you think it's 90% Lopez wanting to leave Movistar, and Movistar, Nzue said, I'm not going to keep a rider here even if he's under contract if he doesn't want to be here? Or do you think it's 50-50 between the two, neither of whom I think come out of this looking particularly good? But I'd be keen to hear your thoughts down below because the official communication from Movistar doesn't really say the reasons for this. If I was in charge of a World Tour team and with Lopez probably at a discount right now having his contract terminated, I'd be pretty keen to sign him up. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Always keen to hear your thoughts down below. I've got the Eschborn-Frankfurt recap video tomorrow, and then I think the next one will be Paris-Roubaix at the start of October. But I'll have some World Championships preview stuff during the middle of next week, looking at some of the classics races we've previously seen this year. But until then, ciao.